Hello, everybody. This is week number 4 of our Applied Economics course. We are really accelerating here. We are almost at the finish line, believe it or not. Week number 4. Um, Everyone so far, I just want to talk about the papers briefly for a minute. Everyone is doing a pretty good job. I'm liking what I'm reading regarding the economic comparisons of the United States with a country of your selection. What some of you all are doing, and it's a good thing that you happen to be doing this, is that you are actually piecing the section papers up together, and that's a good thing. Reason being is that when you come into week number 6, you pretty much have a final edit of the paper together. And so your main objective in the final week would be to just go ahead on and upload the final edit of that paper. I do recommend proofreading it, running it through spell check, and of course, making sure that it's APA formatted, as I've been expressing throughout the course of the weeks. So, good job, everyone. For those who are a little bit behind, let me encourage you by all means, all right, try to get caught up. I understand, okay, the balance between that of a workload and then also attending courses, especially that which takes on the persona of being an accelerated program. So keep in mind, okay, that you want to get caught up as we are going into week number 4, and we only have 2 more weeks left after we conclude this week coming up. So if you have any problems, any issues, please feel free to reach out to me. Okay, I encourage that. I did make an announcement on Moodle, and everyone should have that in their email. That is regarding, of course, phone calls. And it's a very gentle reminder. While I do welcome phone calls, class, let's put a time limit on it, okay? 8 a.m. daily and 9 p.m. nightly will be the cutoff time for phone calls, okay? And it's just kind of a courtesy thing, and I know that everybody understands that. I check my email randomly on a daily basis, at least twice a day. So any emails that are sent over or whatever, I'm looking in my email. I try to respond and expedite that process of getting back in contact with you. However, though, you are still welcome to contact me by phone or by text message regarding any questions. Okay, just want to make that clear. Okay, I don't want to deter anybody from not making calls or text messages. It's just that nightly, let's just put a cutoff time with that. Okay, so it'll be 8 a.m. again, and then 9 p.m. will be the cutoff time. Okay? All right, so let's get into week 4's material here in terms of what we're going to be looking at. Okay, we're going to be looking at macroeconomics. We're going to be looking at total output of income pertaining to a country. We're going to also look at aggregate demand and aggregate supply. Those are supply and demand factors. And we will also take a look at economic growth. So, what does a country do to stimulate economic growth? And of course, economic growth comes in a wide variety of factors. It is the gross domestic product, okay, the total output of products that they happen to ship out to other countries. All right, there's employment, the employment rate. There is, of course, embracing entrepreneurship and people to start their own businesses. There's the trade agreements that one country may happen to have with another. All right, so we're just going to look at some terms and definitions. And again, I won't be with you all long. Like I said, I like to try to keep this within about 20 minutes, not lecture for a full hour, but just begin to think about just some things I want to put out there in terms of terms and definitions. So let's start with macro. Again, I had mentioned this a little bit earlier within this course. I think about 2 weeks ago. It was probably week 1, as a matter of fact. Okay, macro is what? That is the evaluation, the study of an overall economy based on the standards of a country. Okay, so we're looking at overall product output, overall GDP. Pardon me. Okay, it could be outsourcing. Okay, that a country may happen to do. Okay, as they outsource products from another country. All right, and of course, they're requesting from those countries, products to be coming in. All right, so I wouldn't say that's so much of a surplus thing, okay, but it's spending money in order to acquire products, okay, for maybe the purpose of distribution or whatever it may be. But the big picture, it's so many words. That's what macroeconomics would be. All right, so with that, begin to think about nominal gross domestic product. Begin to think about real gross domestic product. Okay, abbreviate that nominal GDP and also real GDP. Nominal GDP, total value of final goods and services for a particular product, that's or a particular period that's valued in terms of prices for that period. That's nominal. Okay, real GDP would be the total value of the final goods and services produced during a particular year or period, and it's adjusted to eliminate the effects of changes within prices. So, okay, that's the difference. Okay, the difference between nominal and also real GDP. Begin to think about, of course, expansion and recession. Distinctive difference between those two. Gross domestic product, okay, is rising in the midst of an expansion. But however, in a recession, the gross domestic product, okay, which again indicates a surplus, is going to be falling. All right, so peaks and troughs actually do go along with that as well. All right, the peak of the business cycle is going to be the point at which an expansion ends, the recession begins. The trough would be where the business cycle is at the point of which a recession ends, and then also an expansion begins. So begin to think about gross domestic product, always related to profit, overall profit that a country is bringing in. Okay, we know pretty much what inflation is. Okay, prices inflate. It's an increase in it. Normally, what happens if you want to compare the prices of cost of goods and services to that of someone making an income, all right, the indicator of a high rising inflation would happen to be that, of course, cost and prices go up, but the wages and salaries of individuals do not increase to go along with those rising costs. So that's a real simple way, of course, to remember inflation in terms of what it is. Okay, and a deflation would happen to be where prices begin to decrease. Okay, and then again, you can compare that with wages and salaries. Okay, either they slightly increase, okay, or they stay at the minimum, but there's a drop in prices when it comes to acquiring goods and services and products. So, just a few other things to remember concerning this would be the consumer price index. All right. And what that does, it indicates the index itself, the movement. It reflects changes in the prices of goods and services that are typically purchased by consumers. So, how does that measure? In so many words, how is that measured? When we look at goods and services and those prices, okay, what reflects those numbers? That would be the consumer price index. And then, of course, I had talked about just a few minutes ago how you always have to look at factors in inflation and deflation. Also, even looking at the GDP of a country and how that's measured based on unemployment. All right, so the unemployment rate, as we know, with what's going on with the coronavirus pandemic, is at its highest that it's been for quite some time. All right, so the unemployment rate would be the percentage of the labor force, of course, that's considered to be unemployed. All right, and then we measure that overall. We measure that. Of course, it's broken down by states as well, but we're looking at the overall employment rate of a country. Okay, so moving on here, begin to think about um, total output and also income, okay, which are components of the gross domestic product. All right, that would be total output and income. All right, begin to think about the components of that. Like, for example, government purchases, goods and services uh, from firms by government agencies that are factored in. You got to look at transfer payments, that are relative to those goods and services. And then also look at the domestic investment. That would be the value of all goods that are produced during a period for the use in the production of other goods as well as services. So again, components of the gross domestic product would be exports. All right, those are sales of a country's goods and services to buyers in the rest of the world. And then imports are the purchases of foreign goods and services by a country's residents. And then you have to also look at the factors of trade, which would happen to be a trade deficit or a trade surplus. The trade deficit, okay, would be the negative, and of course the trade surplus would happen to be the positive. So, along with the gross domestic product, another thing to factor in, okay, would be what's the total value, okay, of final goods and services that are produced during, let's say, for example, a particular period, with the factors of production that are owned by the residents of a particular country. That would be identified as being the gross national product. All right, so what you have is you have the gross domestic product, okay, and factor that in with the net income that's received from abroad by residents of a nation. That's what's going to equal out to be your gross national product. And then also gross domestic income. All right, we're talking about things that are considered to be of asset. That would be or employee compensation. It would be profits, rental income, also indirect taxes, and net interest and the depreciation. That's what's considered to be gross domestic income. So total income generated in an economy, and that's based on the production of final goods and services during that particular period. And then everyone should have disposable income, okay? When you're done paying all the overhead, when you're done paying all debts, obligations, and responsibilities, what disposable income do you have left? And really, that's just not a macro perspective, but it's also a micro perspective when you look at economics. What is your disposable income that you happen to have left over? Moving on here, when it comes to aggregate supply and demand. Now, when we think of aggregate, we're looking at the relationship. We're looking at total quantity of goods and services demanded. And we're looking at the price level. We're looking at other sources of demand. We're looking at, for example, those would be the wealth effect, okay, which the wealth effect would happen to be, okay, the amount of wealth that's being accumulated within the country. And I know every time when we hear the word wealth, we look at the gap between. All right, this happens to be, okay, what is the real wealth of a country? All right, where is it at? What's the wealth effect? We have to look at interest rates, okay, interest rates pertaining to loans, to bank accounts, mortgages, cars. What is the interest rate, okay, that's attached to lending money to acquire those things. There's an effect that actually comes behind that. So you're looking at how the interest rate effect, it changes based on the price level. And it also affects how it's affected pretty much. What's the quantity of investment that's demanded? okay, within the interest rate effect in so many words. And then we have to look at trade effects internationally. That's also a factor. Um, are prices really changing within exports of goods and services? That would be an example of that. And then is that reflecting on overall a change in aggregate quantities of goods and services? Does it cause the curve to dip, or does it cause the curve to raise up? What are changes in aggregate demand? Okay, begin to think about that. Some examples would be consumption of goods, products, and services. It would also be the investment, okay, which you can interpret that, okay, to be assets, ownership. Also, government purchases, okay. What does the government purchase in so many words? What are the regulations that are bearing to that? And then you also have to look at the trade aspect of it pertaining to net exports. And then, of course, the change rate would be the price of currency and the terms of another currency or currencies. So the value of the dollar in so many words, okay, compared to here, all right, what's the differential if it were to go into another country? Okay, one more thing I want to discuss here would be economic growth. And here's the thing about that. When we experience a decline in our economy, when we experience a recession, okay, to get out of that recession, the growth takes some time. It doesn't happen overnight. And I think we already know that. Depending on the severity of the recession, it could take a period of maybe 2 years or more, okay, for us to get back on the outer edge of being in a recession or being out of a recession where we're experiencing recovery, because that's what economic recovery is coming out of a recessional period where, of course, unemployment rate goes down, spending begins to go up, demands for products and services begin to increase as well. Okay, those are some things to really begin to factor in. So to really get to the meat of this, the growth is a process. It's defined in terms of the economy's ability to produce goods and services. And then you have a discussion of growth where, of course, it's a series of events. And it increases the economy's ability to be able to produce those goods and services. So think about productivity in the midst of that economic growth. Think about marginal returns, okay, additional units, things pertaining to that matter. The marginal returns are going to show an actual increase within employment, okay, which of course increases in the output as well too of different things pertaining to quantity. So that's pretty much just kind of looking over some things. There's a lot of graph and charts here, which is something that we do not have to comprehend or interpret. However, though, very interesting. What we can look at is we can look at the gross domestic product as it compares to the United States, and this is one of the tables within the textbook with at least maybe 12 other countries. We're looking at Japan, Germany, France, Italy. We're looking at the United Kingdom. We're looking at Canada. We're looking at Greece, Finland, and a few other countries. So what are the disparities? There's a comparison in economic growth, and it's breaking down the different rates that are pertaining to that. Okay, so that's pretty much some things to reflect on. regarding chapters 11, 12, 13, and 14 as you go into your readings this week, and as you begin to engage in the discussion questions, which will be due by tomorrow. Keep a reminder that, of course, take your quiz. It is due by the middle of the week on Wednesday. And the final assignments, which would be your 2 to 3 minute video presentation, as well as your paper portion this week. Have that turned in by Sunday. Okay, that would be by Sunday. And your paper portion this week, what you're going to be doing is you are going to be comparing the gross domestic product. You're going to be looking at principal exports and imports, comparing the United States with the country that you chose to select. So I'm really kind of looking forward to those readings going into next week as you begin to submit that content over. I will, by Monday going into Tuesday, have the paper portions for week 3 that are due. We'll have those graded. You will see an update within the grading system, as well as the video presentations. So again, blessings as you head into a new week. Week number 5. I am not going to open that up today. What I probably will do is I probably will open up week 5 by Wednesday. Okay, I'm going to do it a little bit different this week. I just kind of want everybody to focus on the current week at hand. By all means, I do encourage everyone to work ahead, but I'm informing everyone that I probably will not open up week 5 until the middle of this week. So we're going into Wednesday. That's when I'm going to probably make week 5 available to content for all students to view. Again, if you have any questions, any problems, any difficulties, please feel free to reach out to me. If you do it again by phone, if you do it by text message, just keep in mind as a gentle reminder the times that I originally put out there. 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. That would be daily. Okay, everyone. Blessings for the rest of your week.